I am rolling.
And we are live.
Well, ish.
for us. For the two of us here, we're live. We're going. Everybody else, you gotta wait like 7 weeks depending on when I actually put this out.
Yeah. Yeah, the timeliness will be a little out of sync.
You know what?
But it's good to take a little break. It's good to take a little break. And was that on the wrong mic or something? Or
there we go. All right. Yeah, those wavelengths look a little bit nicer.
Okay.
All right, cool. Let's restart all that.
Yes, we shall reset.
When I open up Riverside through Google Chrome, I go through all of my settings, make sure that everything's right. But for some reason today, I didn't do it with Audacity. And I was looking at my wavelengths. I'm like, those look a little poor.
Yeah.
It's not picking up like it usually does.
Yeah, I got distracted because I always do just a little test recording before I go live just to make sure everything's working fine. And I decided to just start doing a little whistling. And so I just I got distracted. I'm like, it's not too bad. I should do more of this. So yeah. We'll just have to whistle our intro theme or something, which I won't do because I will spare everyone. But
yes, thankfully. Yeah. Thank you.
They say that you can't whistle when you're sad. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. Because you got to be happy to whistle. I mean, you can, I guess a person could sad whistle, but maybe that makes it more sad. But I don't know. There's something about whistling which is, I don't know, it's kind of therapeutic. So I do enjoy partaking in the whistling.
See, whistling was something that it's kind of ruined for me because my grandfather whistles all the time to a nauseating degree. Whenever we go up to the family cabin, and especially when I was younger, not so much these days because he tends to sleep in more, but I would wake up to him whistling as he's cooking breakfast or just whistling the same 3 tunes over and over and over again. And one of them would always be a Christmas type tune that he'd start in around this time of year.
I love doing that.
And just keep going.
I'm guilty of that as well. I don't whistle nonstop, but there's something about whistling during the summer months, a Christmas tune. I don't know. There's something nice about it. So
see, I could see you transitioning from whistling to playing the harmonica as you're back in the backcountry of Utah, just sitting around a campfire, just busting out a harmonica, just playing Christmas tunes.
Yeah, I will say though that down in some of the canyons I go backpacking in, where there's not another soul around for miles, and you get some really nice acoustics down in those canyons with the walls. I can whistle a really low note that sounds a bit like sort of the Native American flutes. And there's something, it gives me chills when I'm down in there. If I just kind of do the low whistling sounds, I don't know. There's something about that sound echoing through those canyons. So I don't know. I feel like maybe I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with that, but there's something about it.
It's just, all of this is just reminding me of, have you ever watched the movie Deliverance from 1972?
No, I haven't.
Okay. I have to rewatch it because it's been quite a while, but there's this banjo kid. You'll have to look it up.
Yes, then. I am aware of the banjo kid. At least I haven't seen it, but just kind of memes sort of stuff. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I can definitely picture that kind of thing, but a southwestern vibe instead of down in the bayous of Louisiana and Georgia.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's our introduction for today. That's the podcast.
Yes.
That's it. Just whistling, and you can't whistle while you're sad. So there it is.
Yes. When I go on my drive, since I love leaving really early in the morning, there's not a lot to listen to when I'm on the road. And I don't like listening to music when I'm driving. I like to listen to people talking. And sometimes if I have a bunch of podcasts, I might save them for when I'm out in the field. So I'll sometimes just throw on some AM radio. And the stuff that you hear really early in the morning, we're talking like, 3 a.m. It's tinfoil hat sort of talk. It's a bunch of crazy talk. But there's one thing I remembered when I was going on my my last trip, on the backpacking trip. There was a quote, and just before we started recording, I tried to figure out who it was, and sure enough, I found it. Have you heard of Alexander Chalmers? Chalmers.
Sounds familiar.
He was a Scottish editor and biographer, and he has this famous quote. And it was the 3 grand essentials of happiness are something to do, someone to love, and something to hope for. And that's a pretty good quote. I think whistling too. You just, add whistling onto that. That's also another good thing. But I was thinking about that when I was on the backpacking trip. For whatever reason, I had remembered that, and that stuck with me. But like, there's a lot of truth to that, because it's, having something to do is as humans, we're designed to work. We have to have a sense of purpose. We have to have something to do. Someone to love. We are social creatures ish. I'll put an asterisk by that at times. And something to hope for. Something for the future. So I was thinking about that, and I was when I was searching around before starting to record, I finally found that quote. But I think there's a lot of truth to that one.
Yeah, except for the fact that it wasn't said by him, allegedly. But,
yeah. Does it say who it was said by?
Yeah, so I popped over to the Wikipedia page for him because of his name sounding familiar, and it says that on other sites and resources, this quote has been credited to an Alan K. Chalmers. It has also, however, been attributed to Joseph Addison, who lived from 1672 to 1719. But the quote is actually by the American clergyman George Washington Burnap, who lived from 1802 to 1859. And it was published in Burnap's The Sphere and Duties of Woman, a course of lectures from 1848.
That's an interesting title.
Yeah. That reminds me of reading some Schopenhauer and the 1800s the writers from the 1800s, and their views on women are, as you could imagine, a little outdated. But anyway, that is a good quote, regardless who originally said it.
And I did when I looked it up, obviously it wasn't as deep as you found there in terms of who said it. But I always look it up just to make sure it's not like a quote from someone who's extremely problematic. It maybe has a different meaning than we see at surface level, some sort of darker meaning, which I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, who knows what these guys are getting up to back in the day. I mean, yeah. So this kind of goes in line with one of the things I wanted to talk about, and that's been on my mind today more than ever. But the question of who am I has really been on my mind, and it's sort of kicked off more so yesterday. So I've talked in the past about Manuel Morial building a website for me that he had offered to, more of like a blog style kind of very minimalistic sort of website. And we've been in talks about it back and forth slowly throughout the year, trying to figure out everything. And over the course of the last month, we've really kind of picked things up with it, picked up speed a little bit. And he and I had exchanged some ideas, and I had sent him, whenever I'd find like a website, a layout of a website that I really liked, or something that I found that would be cool to implement on my own site, I would send it over to him. And I got this email from him while I was at the gym the other day, and he essentially asked me, let me pull it up so I get it. He said, I was working on your site and I have a question. I had a few in mind that were design sketches or design questions related to the various sketches you sent me, but I now have a more broad one, which is, do you know what you want this site to be?
It's always the simple questions that are the hardest.
Yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, Because when I first was talking to him, I wanted to do this. I had this wild idea of something super minimalistic, something that was unlike anything that you really see online, especially from a photographer in the day and age where we are at, that is so public facing, you know?
Yeah.
I wanted this super minimal website where you go onto it and all you see is my name, the tagline of like healing through or writing on creativity, nature, and mental health, or some tagline like that, whatever I'd written at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then the only other thing on there is a place to put your email to subscribe to a newsletter. There's no other information on the page.
Yeah, just super clean.
Very clean, very basic. It's essentially just a newsletter sign-up page or form. And then you click subscribe, and the page changes where it just says thank you and nothing else. And then you go in, and everything that you receive from me, all the photographs, everything is sent through email. And it, like I said, just this wild, like crazy idea of would something like this work? Would something like this gain traction? And would people be interested in it? Would people actually subscribe to this random page that they find online? Like, especially if they don't know me from Adam, you know? And that was the initial idea that I had sent to him. But then as time went on and I started thinking more about the kind of photography that I want to do, the stuff that I want to do, like the education stuff, running workshops, maybe selling zines and ebooks. Obviously, the website started to expand into different realms, where now it went from something as simple as that to, oh, well, now I need a galleries page or a projects page. I need a page for the podcast and for my writing. But on top of that, I also need a page for print sales, for a shop, perhaps, if those two are separate or combined, a page for my workshop offerings, and the list keeps going on and it keeps building.
Yeah.
So this is really what kind of brought on that question that he asked. And I told him, or I replied back to him after a couple minutes of thinking on it. And I'm like, I know at the core what I want this to be. Like, I want a site that beautifully showcases my photography and my writing. Those are the two most important aspects of what I do. But how to showcase that and what I all want to include with that is trickier of a question. And obviously, thankfully, he's like, he didn't send that email in like any accusatory way of like, dude, what the hell are you doing?
Yeah,
like,
he's just looking for that sense of direction, probably for taking design cues and everything along those lines. Yeah,
exactly. And so he said, okay, well, do this. Like, take a bit in whatever format, whatever way you want, whether pen and paper, audio notes, etc., and write down or figure out what it is that you want each of these potential pages for the website to include. And then from there, he can get a better idea of how to design everything and go through there. So I'm like, okay, makes sense. But as I'm thinking about all of this, there's that bigger question of who am I? And that's really the more devastating of questions, because it should be, again, these simple questions. Face value, very easy to answer. Well, I'm Cody. Hi, nice to meet you.
That's going to be the design. Hi, I'm Cody.
Exactly. But it's this question of, well, when I first sent out that very minimal design idea to him, my main priority was my writing. I wanted like my writing to lead everything else. The photography at the time was kind of in the back burner. I wasn't so certain what I wanted to do with that, whether I was going to start to move away from it a little bit, at least in the public sector, and focus on the writing instead of anything else. But now I'm trying to figure out what is it that I want, out of my creativity, out of my creative life, because I still think that my writing is above my photography when it comes to creative output and the things that I want to do. Like if I know that if I think about, my ideal self, it's not me sitting at the desk watching YouTube videos all morning and then deciding to edit a podcast and finally get that out after how long, and then sit down and record another podcast that is going to take me another how many hours or whatever to edit, let alone how much motivation to actually get through.
Yeah.
That's pretty much today. And I think about that. I'm like, this is not me. This is not who I want to be. Like, I don't want to be wasting my hours, my days, like the podcast aside, by just sitting there and scrolling and watching stupid videos about politics, because that's all that's popping up nowadays. Yeah. And that's all that's going to be in my face for the next how long, regardless where you look. Like, if I think about who I really want to be, I want to be the person that has his nose in a book all the time and is constantly learning. So I want to be someone whose nose is in a book and whose hand is gripping a pen and writing down these ideas and these thoughts and expressing these ideas in various novel ways and creating whatever, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I see that as more of an ideal self than who I currently am. And obviously it's a matter of getting to that point and forcing yourself against the addictions of the world as we currently have it. But all of that is really trying to get more at this core question of who am I? And which is obviously going to help in every other aspect of my life. It'll help especially with this website first and foremost, but with my daily life as it is and how much effort I put into X, Y, or Z.
It seems like this whole thing of having to define oneself is a more, and also in such a punctuated kind of bullet list fashion in a way, is a modern thing, you know, with websites, with social media, with everything, with the need to write a bio about oneself. You know, in the days before, you know, the internet and social media and stuff, I guess the question is how did people like define themselves in any way? Was it based on their actions? Was it based on their relationships? Did they ever even have to say, you know, I guess maybe when introducing oneself to someone else in terms of like, oh, what do you do? What do you do? You know, who are you? You know, that kind of thing. But I don't think those things came up as much as we are now forced to define ourselves in ways. And it's a very difficult thing to do. I think every person who, you know, is setting up a website, for example, absolutely dreads the about me, the bio, the whatever sort of page. Like or if you're asked to submit a short paragraph about yourself, you know, whether it's for a podcast or article or whatever, just it's something that everyone universally dreads. But it also seems like it's a more recent thing that we all expect of each other and we force ourselves to do, but like no one enjoys doing that sort of process. I can see how, you know, creating your website is definitely a huge exercise in that, which is, yeah, it's frustrating. It's not easy to do. You can't distill yourself down to something as simple as that, but you kind of have to.
Yeah. I mean, talking about bios and everything, I think back to Joshua K. Jackson, who we had featured a couple months ago, and his bio, it's since changed, I believe now. It's not as simple as it once was, but he still has that core sentence that he had before. Yeah. That is very basically, Joshua K. Jackson is a photographer based in London, UK.
Yeah.
And he goes on now to talk about the 2 monographs of his work that he's published and what he's influenced by. So he's added another 2 sentences. But still, like you said, I always think back, like, how did Edward Weston and Ansel Adams and even Robert Adams, like, how did they get their work out there? And how did people come to learn, you know, that Ansel Adams is running a workshop, you know?
That's true.
Or that he is offering prints, or that he is doing anything, you know? Like, that he's even released new work. Like, you think about the I think a couple weeks ago we had talked about how we lay out our galleries, and you were saying that there's really no way to tell when a photograph is added to your gallery because of how you have it set up.
Exactly.
Like you don't have a recents gallery.
Yeah.
But you think about that, like unless Ansel had a new gallery showing that was explicitly saying, oh, hey guys, here's some new work. Like there was no way to tell for sure if he had even created anything new in the past however many months or years.
Yeah. Well, you figure back then also it was much smaller circles. There was a lot more word of mouth. There was a lot more going through, whether it was, some degree of a newsletter stuff having to do with galleries and such, but it was definitely a more time intensive probably way of trying to get the word out versus, I'm just going to, post something on Instagram or whatever, where it takes less time, but does it? No, it doesn't. It takes far more time now just because, it sucks you in. And then another thing too, I was thinking of as well is the fact that it's hard to define oneself because that sense of self is always changing. And especially, I've gotten to a point now in my kind of early mid 40s where I'm like, whatever, I don't care. I'm just going to do what I'm going to do. It's like, I honestly don't really care. I'm just doing what I enjoy. But thinking back to when I was in my mid 20s, I don't know what I was doing. I mean, it was a whole different world back then. It was black and white. There was dinosaurs, but it was a different world where I wasn't trying to define myself. Back then, I didn't have to. I was just going out and doing what I enjoyed. So I didn't have all the pressures associated. I did have my website, I think I initially put together probably 2003, something like that. I was under a different host, completely different design and everything. And then again, yes, I did have to put the bio statement. But I'm sure it was not very eloquent. Not that mine is now, but yeah, things seem to start out simple, but then they start building layer upon layer of all the realities of things, kind of like what you're seeing with your website. But yeah, it is a tricky thing to try to define ourselves, especially in this day and age when everyone is, shouting through a megaphone.
Yeah. I mean, I even think back, like even 3 years ago, like before I started working alongside of David Kingham with NPN and the magazine, my whole thing was I want to be an independent artist. Like I want to make a living off of my photography. Not even thinking at the time really about my writing or about anything else, And now when I think about it, I'm of two minds, and I've talked with a few of our listeners about this and a few others.
So you've talked to all of our listeners.
Yes. Yeah. Hi, Garrett. How you doing? Good to see you tuning in today. But I've talked with them, some people, about this idea where I don't know if I truly want that anymore. We have so many photographers out there that are doing amazing work and competing against each other, and the struggle is so major for making any kind of money off of your own photography, especially print sales, even workshops, and that's bound to change in the next 3 years, if not next year. It's still going to change. I kind of combat that with this idea of, well, why can't I just be like Tim Parkin, for example? Like he runs On Landscape. His photography is in the background. That's something that he does as a creative outlet because he enjoys it, but it's not something that he's really pushing.
Yeah.
It's not something that he is so much worried about. Like it's not, you don't see ads for his workshops or for his print sales because he doesn't do that kind of thing. Instead, he has On Landscape and he has his drum scanning service, and he makes these hat things for midges. I'm blanking on exactly what they are, but to help prevent like midges because they're real bad over in the UK.
I had a very different mental picture there for a moment, but I'm glad I got on the right track with that one.
That's my fault for not knowing the name of it. But anyway, but still, like I think about that, and especially now. So to put things into perspective a little bit more, I accepted that job on Tuesday.
Nice.
So I'm going through the onboarding process a little bit slowly, and I'll be starting tentatively September 23rd. So after I get back from Yellowstone. And of course, this is all of these thoughts on like how I want to structure my business or help others with like the magazine and that kind of deal. It all is sort of contingent on my enjoyment of this job and the first year of it and everything.
Yeah, because you don't know necessarily what to expect, how draining perhaps it could be, how perhaps maybe you draw energy from it. I mean, who knows? Maybe it sends you down this whole different path in terms of gives your own personal work even more of a sense of purpose, or maybe gives you a whole different direction with it. It's a big variable, which, is going to change things, that's for sure.
And it's all like, if I really enjoy this, then I don't have to push as hard with my photography and my writing to make an income from it. I can kind of be a little bit more lackadaisical. But if it's something that I don't enjoy, well, then I have this, year of decent salary and of security. But after that, well, then what do I do?
Yeah.
Like, then I have to make sure that I'm still pushing just as hard, if not harder, in order to start earning more off of it. So it's all to say there are so many questions going and running through my mind, all centered around this singular who am I, and figuring that out, which, as we've alluded to, as you've brought up, isn't something that we can really define, and it's a modern issue based on how we are such social or online social creatures.
Yeah, and so with the prospect of this new job, at least that more set in stone. I know that last time we recorded, you're spiraling a little bit, trying to figure out, what's, what direction and stuff. Are you a little more hopeful now that things are a little more solidified, or how is that going?
A little bit more hopeful. Yeah. It's still, you could tell just by my thinking of this question itself, they're still spiraling. It's bound to happen. And it's just how it is in my mind right now and as of late. But at the very least, I have my neighbor whom I'm going to be working alongside of, who is very excited about me coming onto the team and working with her and seeing the clients and working with them and trying this out for at least a period of time and following that curiosity. It's just, I don't know. I don't know how to feel about it. It's going to be weird, or perhaps it'll be nice. After I get back from Yellowstone, that Monday, I'll start the new job, and then I'll have about 3 weeks before I leave for Acadia. So I'll have 3 weeks of working, of training and whatever else is involved at that period. Yeah. And then I'll have a week off where I can kind of sit in the woods and reflect and clear my mind and see, like, okay, how are things going and how are things looking for the near future for this and everything else. So at least that'll be beneficial, I think, if I form it in such a way.
Yeah. And I think kind of like, diving into it a little bit, but then, being able to pull back and, like you said, escape into nature for a little while, then kind of dive into it again. It seems like after a little while, you'll get things figured out to the point where I think things will become fairly clear pretty early on in terms of getting a feel for the balance of things. But like I said last time, I think it'll be good for you just because you've had perhaps too much time on your hands. You'll look back at this, you'll be like, man, I wish I had more time. But too much time can be a detriment to some degree.
Yeah.
But it does sound like this will be a good move for you, and also having that stability, if even for a year or so, and having ability to save up some reserves and stuff, which would then give you the ability to perhaps take some more risks later down the line, but not be, jumping into it with, without any sort of life vest on, so to say. But I think this will set you up for whatever direction it is that you end up going. I think this will set you up for that and probably make you more excited to dive back into the photography when you have the opportunity to, or the writing when you have the opportunity to. So it sounds like things are moving along in a decent way, at least.
It's gonna be. I'm curious to see how everything goes. I mean, from the general idea that I've gotten about the job and what I can all do in terms of implementing my creativity and whatever knowledge I am bringing to the table, it definitely seems like it's going to be a beneficial thing.
Yeah.
Like it will help me. It's just a matter of, like, at the end of the day, I know that even if I really, really love it, I have about 5 years. Or I'm giving myself 5 years. Because I want to, more so because I want to be out of state. I want to move up north, as we've talked about in the past. And
something to hope for.
Exactly. Exactly. If the stars align and X, Y, and Z happens and a bunch of miracles and such, that house prices crash and, and I'm actually able to afford to live.
Yeah.
But, I'm hopeful to, move up north, and I would like to be out of my parents' house before I'm 30. So I said 5 years roughly.
Yeah.
So
I think last week, I believe I had mentioned about how for the zine that I'm doing this year, I'm doing a handwritten approach. I think last time I had kind of done some proof of concepts for how I was going to go about doing that. And over the course of this past week, I actually finished doing all that stuff for the zine. So all the text has been written for it, including the introduction. It was so much easier than last year. It was so much easier. Like I would have, a particular photo that I just needed to write about 2 paragraphs on. And when I did this in the past, I would type the stuff in there and then I would I don't know if that's really what I want. And then I change things around. I change a word here. I change the spacing. I just tweak everything. And I was happy with it, but it was just kind of okay. And it took so much work. But this time I just sat down with my template on top of a light box and then a piece of paper on top of the template. And I just started writing. Like I didn't really necessarily know where I was going with it, but I just started writing. And then I basically wrote as much as I needed. I read it back. I'm like, yeah, that's good. Like it just made the process so much easier. And then I scanned it in, and then in a few cases, I would move a word a little bit to the right or whatever, just so it's a little bit more justified type. But it took very, very minimal effort. But in a process that would have, last time it took probably about a week and a half to finalize all the type for the zine. I just knocked it out in like a couple of days this time around. So having that sort of that imperfect sort of thing worked out really well. And also one of the things I wrote about in the introduction to the zine is about how visual contrast is a recurring theme in the work I do, and try to find one element against another element that are visually very different. Whether it's, the green cottonwood leaves up against an orange wall and the different textures and things. But at the same time, I have the headlines about the type are written in a really clean sans serif typeface. And then I have the handwritten part down below. So just the visual contrast in the design matches more so the photography. So I just wanted to give a little update for that, saying how something like that, embracing that little bit of imperfection, I think makes things, as I said last time, makes things more personal, makes the process easier. And so I'm really looking forward to how this zine turns out this year. I'll just need to have, the final however many photos from the upcoming fall trip. I can just drop them in there and finish up the design relatively quickly after getting back from the trip. But just want to give a little update on that because I don't know. I think it's going to turn out pretty cool. Just having that extra little bit in there, I think makes it a little more personal, a little bit nicer.
Speaking on the power of writing by hand, I was debating, there's this essay that I want to write that is going to be a long form essay. It's semi-inspired by Tim Carpenter's To Photograph is to Learn How to Die, which is a long form essay with digressions that he made into a book that I finished reading while I was in North Carolina. Mm-hmm. Very interesting format, very interesting way of doing it because you had the primary text, and then on top of that you had, as my dad's mowing the lawn, so now you get lawnmower noises on my end at least. You had the primary text, and then you had a red colored text that helped to sort of supplement what he was saying. They were primarily quotes mm-hmm. that he was adding to it. And then you had a blue colored text that those were like the footnotes, and some of those were essay length in and of themselves. So it was very fascinating to read through. And I was thinking that with this essay specifically that I have in mind on death, and inspired by my Memento Mori series, I was debating how I wanted to go about writing it because I love handwriting, and there's a certain power with it where you aren't so focused on the mistakes that you're making because you can't fix them as easily. Exactly.
You have to make them
so
work.
You have that. You're able to just follow the flow of consciousness a little bit more, and what happens. And so I was thinking, it'd probably be easiest, especially with these digressions, if I want to make any and the footnotes, etc., to, write it up on the computer, because then I can do the markdown coding to have everything be as I want it to be, or use Pages and do it that way. Mm-hmm. But then I was thinking, it'd be really nice to write this by hand and have a journal that's dedicated to this, or a collection of journals that are dedicated to this one subject. Yeah. And so I was able to find one. Moleskine makes it, mm-hmm. and it's a traditional type of notebook, but it's laid out where you have on the left-hand side, you have a split column on the left-hand side. You have your main lines and everything, your main page setup in the middle, and on the bottom you have another split section. So you have 3 sections on this page, and it's based on I think it's Oxford that did it, or one of the higher end colleges. So it's based more for college note taking. So you have your main notes in the big section, then you have your cues to help you memorize stuff, and then you have your summary at the bottom. But I figured, those 2 blocks on the left hand side and the bottom could be used for footnotes, side notes, whatever, for other digressions. And then I have my main text in the middle block. So I picked up 2 of those. It came in a 2-pack, and I'm thinking that I'll start on that. But it just made me, your comment on the handwriting made me think of that, because there's just something so much nicer sometimes about writing by hand that you don't have to think as much about the perfection of it.
And it's also interesting because it takes you in different directions at times. Sometimes if I'm writing something, I'll be thinking something, but my hand will write a completely different word. It's something simple, something related, but I'm like, that's not what I meant. But, if I write like it instead of at, or, something like that, where it's simple enough thing, but it changes the meaning of a sentence. I'll get there, I'll pause. I'm like, okay, let's go this direction with it. And I'll just start writing it. And then I read it back. I'm like, this seems very purposeful. This is very coherent. This is, so there is something quite nice about that. Now, for this project, were you planning on scanning that and have that be more so the final part of it, or what's your envisioning for that?
So this is more going to be like the first draft, rough draft kind of thing.
Just to get the thoughts out.
Yeah, the ultimate plan for this, it would be once this essay is finished, and I'm giving myself, I don't have any deadline for it. because of how I want it, or how I see this coming together, is a very fine art self-published book.
Yeah.
Not far from or in line with Craig Modd's Kisa by Kisa and T-Bot. Pair it with my photographs, but have the bulk of the book be centered around that text, around this essay. That's really where I would like to go with it. So, yeah, it's just going to be a first draft.
Nice.
And then painstakingly type it out and print it, and then edit it and type it, and etc.
Nice.
Go through the process.
And that's actually something where also you could probably end up using some of the AI stuff that will just look at the handwriting and immediately like transcribe it. So just go through and make whatever tweaks to it, as opposed to, because I've noticed that for when I took a picture of the some of the handwritten stuff I was doing for the zine. I just took a picture with my iPhone, and then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, I can click on this and it'll automatically like make that into type. It's crazy, with some of the stuff you can do
your
now.
handwriting has to be at least a little coherent and legible,
which is certainly the goal,
yeah, exactly,
for a project of this sort. So it is my turn this time for the artist of the week. So I have done my usual panic scrolling through Instagram 5 minutes before we record. Found a really, really good artist for this week, Matt Redfern. On Instagram, he is matt.redfern. His website, mattredfern.com. And really, really beautiful work. A lot of stuff from some of the areas I am familiar with, and a lot of small scenes. He has these 3 photos pinned to the top of his Instagram feed that, all of his work is beautiful, but those 3 that are pinned up top in particular really stand out. And I can see why he pinned them. But the one in the middle, he calls it Go with the Flow, and it's GOGH. Clearly a play on the Vincent Vincent. I've been talking too long today. It's hot in here. A Starry Night by Vincent van Gogh.
It kind of falls apart, the title, though, when you use a proper pronunciation of his last name.
Yeah.
Golf with the Flow isn't exactly as great.
Yeah.
Sorry. I'm being too correct with your quote and with this now.
Yes.
It's
but really, really beautiful image, and to envision something like that. So basically it's a picture of the surface of the water. It's one where it is flipped upside down. And so you have, the trees reflected from the opposite riverbank, or, the pond or whatever it is. You see those on the bottom, and then you see all the swirls of pollen on the surface of the water. And it just has a really, really cool, surreal look to it. And then the photo to the right of that are pinned, it's looks like frozen surface of water, or it could be moving, but I don't know. I can't tell. It has the look of frozen, but underneath it are either roots or a branch, and then there's some leaves in there. So it just has like this under the surface, very painterly look. And then also the other one in the far left is a snowy scene with looks like some ponderosas, and a young ponderosa among the other ones, and just beautiful, beautiful work. Really, really excellent eye for photography and for shape and for visual contrast and all those details.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through his website now, going through different galleries that he has set up, which, going back to that a little bit, he has them set up in the different seasons, 4 different seasons, not by year or anything of the sort.
Yeah.
But I just found that one that's the tree with it's sort of, like you said, it looks like it's frozen under ice, but it's also difficult to tell. I'm thinking that it is because of the little reflections or little highlights, speckled highlights throughout. And it's in his fall gallery. So I guess it correlates a little bit, maybe with both, maybe with one. There's another photograph that he has. Let me see if it's on his Instagram. Not as far as I can see it. in his fall gallery, there's one that he has titled Snow Globe. That's another. This one is clearly under a layer of ice in the water, in a pond, I should say. And it just looks like leaves of some sort, debris from a tree, and just very interesting to look at. There's a lot here that's really, really nice.
Yeah.
And of course, attracted more to the intimate sort of images.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's another one of the artists where images have a very cohesive feel to them when viewed as a set, where you can see where you can, draw those similarities between them, whether it's the shapes, the textures, the colors, the overall look to them. And I'd say much of the scenes are ones where, a typical person might just walk right past it, not even necessarily notice the potential in it. But, it takes a very skilled photographer to see, those sort of possibilities. There's one photo here. So it's on his Instagram. It's just below the Starry Night sort of photo. It's a picture of a canyon wall, sandstone. It looks like it's probably in Zion. But just the way that some of the reflected light from the sky is affecting the canyon wall. Plus, you get a little bit of warm reflected light. So you get these warm and cool with a lot of rich dark tone. But then there's just like one area has like a little bit of I can't tell if it's water or if it's ice or if it's just like a little bit of a reflective part of the stone there, which just draws your eye right towards the middle of it. So stuff like that, where you walk through those canyons and it's very easy to not notice those sort of details, but it takes a very special photographer to see that stuff. So he's got some really beautiful work. I hope you enjoyed our creative banter. You can learn more about Cody's work by visiting his website, codyschultz.com. And you can find my work at benhorn.com. For further discussion, join us at patreon.com/creativebanter. It's a place where we can interact with you, the listener. And although we greatly appreciate those who contribute by joining a tier, discussions are open to everyone, whether you're a paying member or not. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you around next time.